Uh, Good afternoon. So a new stream today, and it's gonna be a bit different from some of the stuff that I have done before. Um, let's see. Just gonna check that everything's working. Yeah. Um, so yesterday I started to make this kind of trackable UI with Claude. Um, so basically, like you can pick any of the data points here, and it yeah, you can kind of like change the basically you're changing the data by tracking these points. So the blue kind of like represents the data, and then the track effects. And yeah, I want this kind of smooth effect there, so that like the purpose of this is to create some kind of representation, especially like of future or whatever variable you have on the x-axis, and how you think it's gonna influence the variable on the y-axis, or maybe also vice versa, depending on what kind of variables you have. So I'm gonna show a little bit on the motivation of this type of exercise and what I want to use it for at some point. So just a sec. It's yeah, I have to open this one. Yeah, so this is the one thing that I've been like working on my streams lately. So this kind of like a side of the project ideas or projects that I'm doing, and what we are doing today is related to this project here on the probabilities of the end of the world, this kind of website, or the some kind of extinction simulator. Um, so I want to, I'm gonna take this off now and go back. Yeah, basically I want this so that like there would be like the x-axis would be years here, like running from like current year to however far in the future, like could be like thousands of years, or millions of years, or it could be like 100 years. And then this could be, it could be like either like the annual extinction probability of humankind, or this existential risk. You could also like define it as some kind of like, I don't know, some other bad and irreversible outcome rather than just like human extinction. But that's like a maybe easy to understand, like a starting point. Or it could also be like extinction probability by some year. So then it would have this kind of, okay, I think I need to do some change here. Want to have it smoother. And it could also be like, as opposed to like extinction probability by some year, it could be like a survival probability by some year. So then it would basically, we would start at like 100%, and then it's gonna go down. Okay, I need to make it smoother, like everything has to. So it's gonna go down over time, like depending on the extinction risk, and maybe that would be like one thing here that I want to add. Like one thing to do today is to add some kind of variable to. Actually, I'm gonna make. We can make a file here about what I want to do today. I'm gonna make it a markdown file. So, so what we want to do is so variables for like annual hazard rate. So like the annual probability of the event occurring. Like I could actually explain it here. Like probability of if it hasn't. Yeah, something like that. We could also go to like annual extinction probability. And then it would be extinction probability so this would be then like so this is just like then like the survival probability is just like the inverse of the extinction probability by some year. Okay. So what we want to do is we're gonna try to maybe we start with two variables now, and we also like want to find out if even is it even like possible. I think we can start maybe with survival rate. So we're just gonna call this hazard survival. I think I need to explain it a little bit. So this is like a very minimal now, and I kind of like want to see how Claude handles this. Yeah, I would need to have this on different. Then I have like a, yeah, just have over here. I can make this. So yeah, this is like a now very minimal like prompt to Claude. So let's see how well it handles this. And we have this kind of, we don't have the max effort, but we have the high effort. I don't know. Like it would be interesting to know like how much of a difference does it make to change this to, like I know it consumes at least like a lot more tokens, but yeah, I'm not sure like what's the kind of rate of return for this, like what's the benefit on how well it produces. It would be nice to see some, probably there are some benchmarks on that, like people have tried out. I also want to have this, like I like this vicinity smoothing to be higher, and I think I want to have so I kind of like the workflow with AI in general, that when it's thinking about what to do and doing the stuff, it's like it brings this kind of like natural time for you to think about what do you want to do next, or stuff like that. Let's see. Yeah, we could also like, I could check these a little bit, like starting reach. Yeah, I don't remember like all of these, what these do, like starting reach. Yeah, this is about like how, like this is built by, oh, it's reading my document here. I'm just like wondering, where did I save this? Okay, yeah, it's in the my sandbox folder, so that's fine. But it's kind of, it feels kind of like it feels kind of invasive that it kind of like it found my document folder, or this kind of like note text that I had, and then it's now like using it just like without asking or anything, and yeah, it's a bit creepy. So okay, I dropped gravity smoothing sweep from. Okay, let's see what it's done first. I'm not sure if I understand what it's. Did we have? Did it make a new? Yeah, it's a new folder. So let's. It's a new script. So let's. So yeah, here we have yeah, I kind of want to return all those. I don't know why it removed those. Because now it's just like it's. Also, it's not. Yeah, it didn't really understand what I meant by the hazard. Because this survival should be. Okay. Yeah, it seems the cumulative one is here. Um, do, do, do. Um, I think there's a I think it's probably like I think the problem here is that it doesn't understand that like or there's like a clear um, there's one issue here that with survival that if the user tracks the survival down at some point, it should affect the hazard rates in previous years. But it might be, but you kind of like need to make a decision there that which years are affected by how much to come across like the new survival rates. So that's kind of like problematic. So let's just try to make some kind of like if a survival I think there might also be that this might be quite intense for even like even for like R, which is very fast at calculating. I think it's very fast at like calculating like numbers, like making calculations. If you're like making calculations on the fly, it can get pretty heavy, I think. So let's see what's... Also, I'm not sure like why does it always return to this? This is now like, yeah, it's like 30 observations. Kind of want to have, and even if like what it's gonna come up with right now, even if that's gonna work, it might be a lot harder with if we go to those results with like thousands of years or millions of years. So that might actually become quite impossible. Although like I do have a plan of restricting like how much, like there's gonna be a lot of like interpolation with those bigger numbers. Okay, it's thinking that it's a meaningful redesign, so that's kind of like a good so this is what I'm a little bit worried about. Everything runs live in JavaScript. Is it JavaScript? So does it mean that it's also like making the calculations in JavaScript? I'm not sure, because I think R could be a lot faster for calculations, but I think maybe the bottleneck then, could the bottleneck in speed then become to be like the conversation between JavaScript and R? Okay, let's see what it has made. So okay. So this seems okay. It's survival. Okay, it works. So if I change this, it's gonna do that kind of. So I think like 150 observations could be something that's reasonable if I'm gonna do like all kinds of. Actually, it might be. I'm not quite sure yet how I'm gonna do like condensing like big time scales on this one graph, because it's probably not gonna be like a linear time scale, because that might get tricky. Well, it could work for time scales up to like 1000 years. I think that could be reasonable. But other than that, it's gonna be maybe not gonna work out so well. So yeah, now we have more. Yeah, I kind of like it's creating this a little bit annoying like so I'm not sure if one can help this. Okay, also I don't have the functionality. So yeah, this might actually break it. This might be the thing, like, because now when we are only like on this track motion, I'm only tracking the one point. Of course, it's like affecting all the points around it, but like if then I move to those other points, it might be, well, I'm not sure. Like I think it also like even trickier than thinking about those like the time scales could also be the like the hazard rating. Right now it's going, I think, yeah, I need to have like a create a that's like a 0.01 initially. Yeah. something like that. But let's see. Yeah, it works fine. It works quite well. Yeah, it's quite weird. It's quite easy maybe to create some like weird outcomes with this. Oh yeah, I had the one thing here. So anything else? I kind of like want to maybe like if I have several changes I want to make, I think it's better to at least a little bit clump them together. I only have like 50% of the session limit for Claude left, so I kind of want to save it a bit. I wonder if I could also manage with a lower effort here, like because it's quite mechanical, I think, like this. Yeah, maybe I'm wondering like something about how this affects. I'm also wondering. It seems that all the changes in the survival rate are kinda instant. Like it seems. I wonder if this. I could like ask. Yeah, why does it come something like this? And here, if I want to create this kind of shape that goes like this, like here. Oh yeah, it's impossible because why? I suppose this shouldn't impact. Yeah, maybe it's kind of like yeah, I suppose it's like this hazard in the future. It has to have kind of like room for that to occur. I don't know. It's so weird, like this behavior. It's so much like different to control the survival rate and this hazard rate. Like you can do anything with this one. Okay. Yeah, everything is just so instant with this one. Yeah, and of course the thing is that you can never go. It has to kind of like remain. I wonder, is it like the word, is it convex? But I don't know if that's. Here I would like to just push left. But it's a bit tricky. I don't. Somehow it's kind of like hard to make the shape that I want. And with this, it's just so easy. It's just like kind of like. And of course, okay. I understand it has to stay convex or whatever is the word for that, but um, or like your if you go on the x-axis, the survival rate values cannot go up as you go to the right, but it's still a bit. Yeah. Yeah, this worked out quite okay now. What if this is high? I don't know. Maybe it's fine. Maybe I'm just overthinking it a little bit. I was also thinking like I would want to add here a cumulative, basically like a cumulative survival rate. Like if we think this as kind of like a survival of the species, so how long will the species have lived? Also, like one thing that I might want to have here is, it kind of depends, like if this is if it's a linear time scale, then I'm fine with these points. For example, if each point represents 1 year, then that's fine. But if there's some kind of like change in this time scale, so if it's kind of like a logarithmic time scale, so then these points are not years anymore. So then I just want to have a line here. So I think I want to have that as an option. Only lines and no points. I'm also like wondering, I should maybe get into this time scale business somehow. There's also like one thing that I might want to include at some point, if it becomes a problem of having a very I could actually make a test of how heavy this is. Yeah, I could have like in the UI, I could have select numeric the number of observations. So then we're gonna test. I'm also like thinking how much of this is actually, yeah, I do get the feeling that this is just like a message. I'm just like thinking like how much of this math, it seems that the math might be happening inside the JavaScript stuff, which I'm not so familiar with. So I could also just ask, like, if I want to do stuff with longer time scales, is that gonna be like an issue? Okay. I could also try to recognize where it's happening. And also like, oh, but on the other hand, like, yeah, these are of course like in shiny. So where do the, maybe they go back to the JavaScript later. So let's look at, for example, the sigma rate. Where does it go? Well, they have a function here. It's just for like send custom message. I'm gonna like have screwed up my UI a little bit. Set params. Maybe it sends the custom message to the JavaScript. So let's look at this set params where it's going. Yeah, it probably goes there somehow. Yeah, it says then it uses some kind of function there. Yeah. Yeah, but the function hasn't been defined here. So this is just like a taking the function values, and yeah, I think here, yeah, these are just like the initial values. I'm not really sure what's okay. I think this is the function probably, maybe, or these are just the initial values. Okay, here. Yeah, this is the one, yeah. Okay. We're done with the previous command. Okay, the sliders didn't work on the survival track before. Yeah, okay, let's see. Yeah, this is a lot more like the scales are working a lot better here. So let's see. Not sure I like what's happening here. Because I think like I would have wanted okay. This doesn't like feel intuitive at all right now. Yeah, it's I think like part of this is that the hazard rate, it's because if it changes the scale, it always goes to the top of the scale. So so maybe something. I wonder if that's like the only thing that's making this so unintuitive. It might be that it's so let's do this. Like here, I would just want it to be like a smooth shaped hazard curve. But it really isn't. Now I'm guessing that if we're like under that like 0.1 value or 0.01 whatever it is, if we stay under that, then like this behavior seems a lot, at least a bit more normal. So let's look at here the behavior. I think this looks pretty okay. Let's look at how if we put this vicinity smoothing higher. Ooh, it has some kind of, what the hell? Okay, let's go back. Yeah, it might be that one is that you cannot really go. Maybe you cannot really go below one. How do you say it? Say it like there's some like they go to like power scale or something. Like I'm thinking about like multiplications of 10, like power law. Yeah, order of magnitude, I think that's a good term maybe. Orders of magnitude. So if yeah, that kind of thing, yeah. Yeah, let's put these three things. There's a lot of like cool stuff here. I'm especially kind of like excited about this trying out like how great numbers can this handle. Yeah, there's yeah, I wonder if there's like something about this. Like how do I how do I indicate like that, especially when changing the survival rate, that I want some kind of like smooth. Yeah, maybe the issue is here that it should. Maybe this could be, if you look at this here. Yeah, it should be possible that kind of like the first, you have those like those very first hazard rates that are in the left side, they should be going up as well, so that those that are a little bit more to the right that now form this kind of mountain, they wouldn't have to go up as much. And yeah, I don't know. But maybe it's just is some kind of like, could I do this? Could I do something better here? I don't know. Okay. Yeah, this time like no, at least not yet, like no comments on whether it like my ideas or not, whether it like these changes. Let's see if we get some kind of warning like about having too big of a data. Okay, let's see. So here we have the observation setting. It's quite responsive. Actually, yeah, okay. Here showing just the lines. So it doesn't. So this would be one change that. Okay, maybe the thing is actually that they only have these lines in here also, like they don't have the lines for this drag, so yeah, maybe the lines are actually they are maybe they're drawn by, why is this 105? Yeah, they're probably drawn by ggplot2. Okay. Yeah, let's try this hazard rate scale now. So we have started. And this is like a change. Now we're gonna like punching through. Okay, that's kind of like janky. Let's see. It's changed here around here. But it doesn't, it seems that it doesn't change. This is actually like a good behavior that it doesn't change before I release it, and now it changes to this new. But it's a little bit trickier with if you need to increase the rate, because then you have to have it like, and then you have the old one there kind of as a background. and then you cannot go higher. Yeah, I think it works quite fine. So let's look at if we add like numbers of observations. Yeah, so here I think these should be, because now these reach values, they're not relative to the number of observations, so that makes it so if we go back to like 100 observations, then these are gonna like built on this kind of they built for this number of observations to kind of like work smoothly. So I'm thinking like, could there be a way to, could I yeah, just like so it's, how would I say it, like make the relative to or so maybe I could describe this something like similar looking yeah, maybe that could explain it. Okay, let's try putting like even more observations, so let's go like 1000. So that's like, yeah, still like checking like I think it still looks like very responsive, like even if it doesn't like work as I want it to work. But so let's add like, make this like 10,000. I think it still feels okay. Now it's starting to, I feel it's starting to lag a bit. Maybe. Okay, I think I have to do something like this. It's gonna like look so weird, like you get this kind of weird, it just kind of like feels that it doesn't like recognize like all of these, because this should be like everything here should be like now on 0, because I just go through all of these here, but it doesn't really do that. Okay, so let's try 100,000 observations now, and it took quite a lot of time to load, and you could see that there was like a trace of the previous graph there. Yeah, and it's like significantly slower. I think it's become like quite unusable at this level. but this, like, even if you want to go have those like observations up to million years or something like that, this might not be a problem, because we can do some kind of like extrapolation. Like this has to only be like the data, like the stuff that's showing on graph, but it can be different in the, it can be different when you go in kind of like in the actual data. You could then you could calculate like the actual data in R, and it could come to the user with some delay. Like if this 1,000 years remains, like this seems like quite responsive to me. Seems like super responsive actually. So I think that might provide enough kind of like detail for this to work. Okay, there is still this issue. Like it should pick up everything. Okay, it does now. I think it might have to do with this like drag parameters, because they are so like they're built around like 100 observation settings. So so let's ask for, I don't know, this is kind of like, if it understands what this means, then that's nice, but it might be that it doesn't. Yeah, this might be just, if I make this to I don't know, if I put everything here, yeah, I cannot really seem to draw. But this might be, I might have just like screwed up something here, but I cannot get this up now. Let's put that to the max. Yeah, now it works better. Yeah, you kind of like have to. Yeah, that's like one thing here. Like you cannot. You have to kind of like, yeah, it has to do with those. This track dynamics not scaling. Let's see if we can do this. Scale sigma, yeah, this seems. Okay, let's try this again. And we're gonna put 1000 there, and I'm not sure. I think it's working. Here I might only want to have like show the lines. Yeah, it looks better without the points, and I think it's probably also faster to draw it. I wonder if I should have should I have like a third line to signify, yeah, again with this weird behavior, like and this is something I have to something I have to figure out is this. Maybe it's just that should this survival have like I think it comes down to like it's a bit yeah, because it has to take this survival thing like very literally, and there's kind of like nothing to, yeah, you have to be quite, it's quite difficult to control this. And I think this happens especially with maybe this is gonna like exaggerated with the longer timelines. It gets more difficult to control this. So now we're, yeah, you can notice that it's getting like laggy with this if we go to this 10,000 scale. So what I kind of like would want to have for survival is some kind of, should it have like if it had like a bigger reach, from the beginning. But it is so hard. Maybe I gave a little bit like a wrong kind of idea to it on the like that everything should be changed in some kind of proportion. I think we need more kind of like smoothing stuff. Not quite sure like that this is working. Because it creates this kind of like here, even if I have like the vicinity smoothing like at 100, or it's actually at 0. Okay, let's try again. Ooh. So what's happening? Oh yeah, we have to go. To. What? Oh, it's because of this. And we should probably have different sliders for. Okay, there's still something going on. What's wrong? Why is it doing this? What's happening? Does it have to do? I'm just gonna restart it. It might be some. Okay, it stopped. So let's try putting again. 100,000 is this? Or it's. Yeah, it gets like super choked now. 10,000. Still somehow it's weird to. Yeah, there's like. There's like those. It shouldn't produce that kind of. Let's try putting it to max. But it's still. Even if we're at 15,000. It's either that this scaling thing is not really working, or it might be this might be related that it's like a too heavy of a calculation. And then I'm again like wondering like could this calculation be at yes, like would it help it was if it was R doing the. Why does this go? Why does this go to 0? What's this again? Why does it do this? Is it because of this one? Moikka Air Planets. I don't really know what's causing this. And it doesn't really like, if I restart the app, it doesn't do it yet. But now something makes it start like this. And we are like at 150 observations, but it might just be something that again, that I don't really understand about, like this, or like hazard rate and survival rate. But it shouldn't, like, if I start with this, I think now maybe it's because we did this now for different time scales that it's not really working out, but it's not now working for the 1,000-year time scale either. But again, it's, if you start it, everything is fine for a while. Like, what's the change? Like, everything works now. Then if I go to bigger number of observations, this is working. I wonder if it has to do with, like, if there's those jumps between different scales. It's also like, or is it caused by, yes, air planets, it's yeah, that's essentially what's happening, that it's yeah, I'm kind of like changing the data with mouse, and then it's not changing just like the point that I'm like tracking, but it's then like also like changing the points near it, so it's kind of like supposed to create this kind of like there's a balance between like the line being smooth and then like accuracy on individual points, and these sliders up here, they kind of like control that balance. And these red and blue lines, they are basically the red line is kind of like the hazard rate, and then the blue line, so what I basically want to kind of like use this for is a kind of like extinction simulator. So if the red is kind of like the extinction rate, if the extinction hasn't occurred before that year, and then the blue is kind of like the survival given all the extinction probability. So if we lower the hazard rate here, then the survival goes up, or if we move the survival rate up, then this extinction or hazard rate kind of like responds. But but this doesn't look like natural right now. Like I need to change the script somehow because I want to create some kind of like smooth. Yeah, I want this to be smoother than it is now, like, or to behave in like a smoother way. Yeah. But I'm like, in general, I'm like very pleased with how responsive this is, and I think there's like it has like a possibility to make it quite like nice to use. This is actually about I'm gonna show you not about natural disasters. So kind of like interested in human extinction probabilities. So what's like the, like, even if we have like quite low extinction probabilities for humankind, they can like still like accumulate over a long period of time, so that our survival is gonna be. So this is kind of like the project that I want to do, is this kind of website to kind of like visualize how different probabilities, how do they, yeah, I don't know, somehow like visualize how they accumulate and how serious stuff it is, and yeah, maybe use as some default values. There's some mostly if they have studies about these questionnaire studies on like what are these probabilities, how high they are. Usually they ask like extinction probability, this existential risk by year 2100. So it's not like annual hazards, but this is kind of like inverse of the survival. So if they evaluated the extinction probability to be between 1 to 7% by year 2100, so that would mean basically that the survival rate is between 93% and 99%. So if you assume that there's some, you could assume there to be like some constant hazard rate over years, and you could then like, yeah, and it could result in these numbers or something. But maybe this could also be used, like this site that I want to build. It could also be used to collect kind of like more precise estimates, like precise over time. They do ask like it in like 2030 or 2050 also, but like I think it could be nice to create this kind of system where it's you could like for example, I don't think like maybe it's not like very big probability in like the next 5 years, but like in 2040 or something like that, it could be like, because there's this kind of like speculation about some artificial general intelligence happening or something like that, so that could kind of like increase it like momentarily. But if we survive that period, then it could like go down again, and like we could reach this kind of like a very low probability zone if we kind of like survive this kind of like AI threat or whatever. And so then you could kind of like think that how how much like does lowering this probability over here, like it's gonna have like a big impact in the long future. So yeah, but maybe I've had like more static presentations of this also in the past, kind of like but I think this might be because I want here to be like maybe like main message is kind of like that if you lower the hazard rate at some point it's gonna pay off in the long run, especially if we could calculate like the kind of like output as number of human lives that are like expected number of human lives that are gonna live. But maybe in this case it might be, yeah, I would want to see like those both like the like it should keep like if I release this it should keep like the previous line here as some kind of shadow to indicate how much something kind of like helped. I don't know. Yeah. It makes testing different scenarios and like how much of an impact that's different. Like if you think about okay, this is some kind of intervention that makes this kind of change, like how much what does it affect? Yeah, maybe something like that, some kind of like yeah, I think like some kind of consensus is now that the artificial intelligence is the biggest threat, but it's also like it's very it's a lot related to other threats like the what kind of like scares me the most is kind of like that with AI it might become a lot easier to produce some kind of biological weapons or like especially like some kind of pandemic type, like for example if you think about COVID pandemic it's and how easily it spread to the population, but it wasn't. But if you kind of like use AI to like if someone wants to create like a pandemic that destroys all of humanity, would it be possible to use AI to make that more likely? Like you don't need to be that great of a like a scientist if you have AI tools. Of course, you need a lot of like expertise and a lot of like some lot of like laboratory equipment and stuff like that. But maybe the point is that it becomes more and more easy for it requires less knowledge than without AI to do some malicious stuff than it does. Yeah, AI kind of like helps there. It provides a lot of knowledge for that kind of things. Yeah, those are maybe the biggest one. Then there's like nuclear weapons in some capacity. That's like kind of like the old biggest threat. But maybe nuclear. I think maybe the consensus that it's a likely threat to happen, but it's maybe not so likely to destroy humanity in totality, whereas the biological weapons could be like those engineered pandemics could be, or what you have this mirror life concept that could be like very deadly. Yeah, you could basically use, and that's like maybe one thing that if we had like reasonable estimates of like, you know, like the nuclear war happening, at least you could like, because one subsection uh, could also be like the occurrence of what they call like because in addition to existential risk, there are the catastrophic risk that are those like not so severe that they would maybe destroy humanity, but they would like uh, cause a significant loss of population. And I think like the nuclear exchange, that if it happened during the Cold War, like from the Cuban Missile Crisis or something, um, yeah, I don't know if it would have like there are a lot of those like it's very difficult to like estimate how bad like this nuclear winter effects would be. Um, like would it, but maybe it wouldn't be enough to cause humans to go extinct. I think it could destroy like the majority of humankind. I think that that's could actually be quite likely if it was like serious nuclear winter. Um, and like one extension of this tool that I'm thinking is that you could like set like in kind of like addition to like having this kind of probability for this kind of like event happening, you could also set like how big of a population loss would it produce. So and then you have like then like instead of this survival rate here, you would have uh, like a population estimate. So if we have like whatever 8 billion here, then they kind of like, or whatever, kind of like assume that it would stay constant without or you could also like model it to like increase if nothing else happens. So I think it expected to increase to around 10 billion or so during this century. But then you could just like estimate like how big of a. But yeah, about the Cuban Missile, like about those like event probabilities happening, I think that could also be like an interesting like avenue. Is that if we knew like, or if we kind of like estimate the probability of something happening in the past, then you could like show like uh you could maybe then like visualize somehow that we are we are lucky to be alive today, and we shouldn't trust our luck so much maybe. So you could kind of like show the past that okay, this is kind of like the path that we took, that we have this like very high. Okay, I cannot really. Yeah, I'm still a little bit. But you have this like very, you have like we are here at like 100% survival. Yeah, okay. Imagine that it's at 100, but then like then it kind of like that. But in expectation, like given the probabilities of nuclear war or whatever in the past, it's not like 8.7 billion people or whatever the amount is now, like, but it's like you could say it's like 6 billion people that kind of like are expected to be alive at this point. And yeah, we should be lucky to have that 2 billion more. You could have maybe something like that. And I think there were some like very high. I think at least like Kennedy was saying something like that. He thought that it was kind of like a coin flip, almost like maybe it was specifically about like Cuban Missile Crisis, that it was kind of like a 50% chance of a nuclear exchange starting or something like that. I don't know. And of course, like it kind of like you could have like if you have here like you have like a year 45 here when you start having nukes, and before that it's kind of like a 0% probability. But like the nukes, they kind of like started this era of humankind being able to destroy itself. And maybe in the, I don't know, like Cuban Missile Crisis, it was 50s, 60s, something like that. It's I don't know if they had like if enough like, yeah, it would have cost. Yeah, again, if it's just talk about like this kind of like catastrophic event occurring, like there was like a nice definition in this. I'm gonna show this again. Yeah, if you want to look into these probabilities, I recommend this forecasting existential risk evidence from long-run forecasting tournament by Forecasting Research Institute. But they had this like definition of catastrophic risk that it's 10% of more of humans dying within like a 5-year period. So that's kind of like a definition of this kind of like catastrophic event. And I think that's been there's been a real possibility since the start of Cold War for that kind of event. Like I think like from quite early on the stockpiles were so high that they could have caused nuclear winter. I think some estimates suggest that it takes like if there's like 100 nukes at the same time, that could be enough. Like I don't know, it sounds a bit low. It might be that it need more, but it's, I don't know. It could be in some kind of like ballpark. Yeah, it sounds a bit low. Might need, but it's. But yeah, there was like, for example, in the 80s, there were like so many like nukes in stockpiles. So that's like another of those periods when the, in addition to that, like Cuban Missile Crisis period when the probabilities were like super high. So I'm gonna go back to this. So yeah, if you consider like whatever, if the Cuban missile crisis was here, and then you had like I think like 70s was a lot easier time. Like it was lower, it was still like there was still like quite like a probability because there were those like stockpiles. I don't think they. I'm not sure if they had actually like they had like a better diplomatic relations, but I'm not sure if they actually like reduced the stockpiles or anything in the 70s. But in the 80s, like I think the stockpiles went up. There were like worsened relations. So, and there's like a yeah, I was thinking like there's like a, I don't know when it started, but there's this doomsday clock concept by some nuclear physicist that kind of like, because they wanted to like it was basically like a proxy for this kind of probability estimate uh, for nuclear war or kind of like nuclear apocalypse. So they kind of like, yeah, you can look it up like doomsday clock if you want, like, but they try to have somehow like signal like how high the probabilities are. But yeah, back in the 90s, I think 90s was like a very like low probability period, like after the collapse of uh, Soviet Union. Uh, Maybe it started to go up around like 2001 with the terrorist strikes. Maybe kind of like the atmosphere got worse then, but I still think uh, like early 2000s, 2010s, yeah, maybe started to go up there, and like I would consider that right now, like in 2026, I don't know. I think it's higher than maybe than in the 80s. I'm not sure, or it could be around the same levels, but I think it's very high, and I think like people are kind of like because it hasn't occurred, and there's been like so long time that we've had nukes that people don't really appreciate, like, because they might like think that okay, it's a 100% survival rate because it hasn't occurred, there hasn't been a catastrophic event, but that doesn't mean like if you would accumulate this, I think the scales are now like wrong. It's not like the survival is not like 0.3 or like the expected survival rate, but it might be like, I don't know, 80% or something like that, or it could be that like so that like they could have been like a cumulative like 20% chance of a nuclear war happening, and that's like a big number, and I think we don't appreciate in a sense like how lucky we have been, or even if it would have been like improbable for the event to actually happen, but in case it would have happened, it's so it's kind of like, yeah, and we become like too kind of like yeah, I don't think we care enough. I think like maybe there's like the alertness is higher than it was like some years ago, uh, especially after like Russia's invasion and stuff like that. But I still think it might be a little bit like um, undervaluated. And then like if you look at current time, if you want to expand from this nuclear team, we have a lot more threats now that we had before, like that pandemic stuff. Um, and it's also like natural pandemic. There's like this division to like naturally occurring pandemic, like the COVID pandemic, and then like those engineered pandemics. So yeah, it could have been like if COVID was worse, if it kind of like if it had the same kind of like virality as it has, but if it was more lethal, uh, it would have only needed to be just a little bit more lethal for us to, well, it's kind of like a relative thing, but if it was somewhat more lethal, we could have like reached that 10% decrease in population. I'm not actually sure like what's the like number, how much of the population it's, I don't know, was it like less than 1%. I think it's quite a lot less than 1%, but whatever, like if it was more lethal, of course they, like these viruses, they have like I think like some kind of like in nature, like the more complex an organism is, the more, or like the more lethal it is, the more complex it has to be, and then it might be more difficult for kind of like virality or spread. But again, if you can like engineer this stuff, and you can like you can find some combinations that are kind of like find the right balance, and I don't know. Yeah, that's also true that the precautions would have been, but I'm not sure. Like I was thinking about like COVID, that uh, yeah, yeah, probably that would have been case to some extent. But yeah, I was sort of thinking about like China, for example. It had like super strict, like or it held like super strict like safety precautions, and it still spread. And they, because at some point I remember that I think like all the societies, they had this kind of choice on how high you want to kind of like keep the precautions, or how much you're gonna like rely on this kind of what do you call it in Finnish, like laumasuoja, what do you call that, like you just let it spread and kind of like take the hit, and assume that, and because it wasn't so lethal, many countries kind of like opted to do this. And because we got those vaccines, I think like, was it, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, maybe it's called herd immunity. Yeah. Like I don't remember the timeline exactly. Like when did we like, but probably there was some quite a lot of like correlation. Like when we got the vaccines, then they lowered the precautions considerably. But of course, they could have been higher already before the vaccines if it was more lethal. But yeah, I'm still thinking about like China, which held on to like some very strict safety precautions. Uh, but even, but they did, I think it's still bred, and they at some point also kind of like gave up on that. Maybe also because they noticed that the vaccines are pretty efficient. Yeah, not sure. Yeah, but yeah, I'm kind of like, I'm interested in this like existential or catastrophic risk topic, because yeah, it's especially because I think like if you go back, and that there's quite a lot of, okay, can I get this to 0? Quite a lot of arguments that um, if, okay, I'm gonna, so this should, that we might be in this like this period in time, and maybe like the next 100 years could be this kind of period where the risk is like high. uh, so but it might, I don't know, but then it might go down quite a bit in the future. like if is a, I'm trying to visualize it, but oh yeah, I put this. I don't know. There's something with this. Yeah, I think it got screwed up because of this. Because I wanted to have this dynamic work for kind of like all the number of observations, and I'm not really like sure how it works. Well, I'm not sure it's about smoothing. I'm just gonna like do kind of like to start it again. So I think this might fix it. Yeah. Yeah. So it might be that like maybe not like the next few years, but like some kind of like decades after that, it might be like a very elevated hazard, and maybe like, I don't know, if we survive like 50 years, then it's kind of like, okay, maybe we have learned to live in peace as humanity, and maybe we have kind of like if we haven't destroyed ourselves by then, that might be a signal that because we have so much capacity to destroy ourselves. So if we haven't done it, that might mean that we have like good safeguards to not, or have a kind of like built good safeguard to not do it, or we have kind of like learned to live in some kind of harmony. So you could expect that this rate goes down, and especially like if we manage to become like some kind of like multiplanetary species, then that's gonna be some kind of I'm gonna make this a bit higher for visualization. So that point like might become like a sudden drop. As we're kind of like spreading to other planets, so it might stay at like very low level. I kind of like, I need to be able to make some kind of like maybe this should be some kind of logarithmic scale, this hazard scale, to kind of like be able to have like very low values, like very low, because they might be like at some point these annual risks or hazards might be like thousands of times smaller than what they are in this century. But yeah, if this was kind of like so let's say that this is now like a 300 or 400 year time scale that we are having here, or actually let's increase this to be like it's actually quite easy. Okay, maybe it's not super easy. Let's make this like a 1,000 year. So this would be then like a very high risk here or something like that. So then our generations over here, we are in a very important position in terms of like, if you look at the survival, if you lower here, that's gonna have like so much effect on the entirety of survival, because like the area of danger is so high currently. Yeah, something like that. And of course, if this rate here there's low, and it might even go like lower, and we look at like tens of thousands of years in the future or hundreds of thousands years in the future, it becomes even more important for us to and this is also like one thing that it's gonna be nice to simulate here and try out, that if this rate it is like if this, let's have a little bit bigger scale here. It's good test also like how the scaling works here. Okay, these are now bigger rates. They're a bit too big also. Something like this. Okay, let's go back to actually the previous scale, because this is too. So we have. It's a bit tricky to draw with this, because I have like, maybe it lacks a little bit of like, because at some points you want to have like, okay, I now want to have, okay, let's lower the smoothing, but it's take like too much of this. Yeah, thanks for chatting. It was very nice to chat, and bye. Yeah, so then if we have like very high probabilities here, and we're gonna like, then it doesn't matter so much what we do here, because especially if these are like, let's say that these are, so it's gonna like almost certainty that we're gonna like die at some point, so then it doesn't matter so much what we do here, because we are gonna, it's gonna like basically like we're gonna die anyway, so it doesn't matter so much. But and you can try this then out like with different future scenarios, but yeah, I just need to be able to draw this a bit better. Okay, it has to be a bit smoother. Yeah, but I think maybe I can figure this out with some parameterization. It could also be like like originally I was planning to have this as not like that the graph area is not interactive, but rather that rather so that you would just like input those hazard rates, and they would just like then consider like, you know, you have one input here and then another input here, another input for this period, and then you have like flat hazard rate within that period. And I think that's easier maybe for comparing comparing changes. So I'm not really sure yet if I want to keep this, although of course like you could just make this into some kind of flat line, and then you have another flat line here. Or another thing that I'm thinking is that making some kind of anchor points. Like you have these like lines here that go up. So what if you could only track the points that are at that point, and then it kind of extrapolates this area between them, something like that. So then you could also have, you could kind of like choose if you want to have like a numeric input or have the input in here. Then you could have, yeah. Then again, it's a bit, maybe it's a, okay, if we have like this kind of value here and this kind of value here, so what's the shape gonna be between those? Because it could be like a linear progression, or it could be some kind of like logarithmic transformation like this, or could be like some kind of like a bit like exponential transformation like that, or some kind of yeah, well, this is a bit like kind of like a log transformation. So that's nice in a sense that you can set it yourself here, or you could, but I'm not sure if it's actually convenient enough. But you could also just click some button that, okay, this is like, it could be like some kind of option that you can choose that, okay, this is my yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe that's something for me to think. I'm gonna check like how much of yeah, I still have some of my Claude quota left. Let's see if we can figure out something to probably be finishing quite soon, but let's try to have maybe like one more. Maybe like one more. Like one more command for it. We could create like the inverse of this survival rate. I think I'm just gonna end here. I don't really have anything in my mind at the moment, so yeah, I'm gonna end here. Getting hungry. Yeah, but I think we made some pretty good progress on this, and I think that even if I'm not gonna use, like, if it turns out that this is not like a good approach for this site particularly, um, I think I will be using it for something at some point, because I think I'm very pleased with this kind of like how fluid this kind of interface is, like how responsive it is, even with we go like especially like how responsive it stays if we go to like 1000. And I think like all of these issues that I have with this level, I think they are to do with uh, like not having enough precision. I think like 1000, or like the smoothing dynamics, I have it like that they're not like optimal. I haven't like figured out how to kind of like phrase it well enough for Claude. Um, but yeah, like 1000 observations is like plenty, because I'm thinking like if we go into like different time dimensions, like if you have like a 10-year time dimension and a 100-year time dimension, if you like put them each after one another, uh, and if you allocate like 100 observations for each of those, and then you kind of like extrapolate the years between those for each time period, so you can like if you have like that 1 million year scale, you can compact it to 100 data points, or you can compact like a billion year time scale to 100 time points, and then you just like extrapolate. So I could have easily like have like the 1000 data points that I'm working with right now. It's like well enough to have like super accurate 1 million or 1 billion year um, calculations. Okay, I'm gonna end this here for now.